So while I may highlight a couple of interesting stories here and there, this episode is mostly about guy shit. But more so, and I never really thought I'd say this, ghosting. I think that's the more predominant thing that I'll be talking about, or at least reasons why guys just disappear or don't stick around with a babe. And it's a bit surprising that I haven't actually covered ghosting as a topic, but interestingly enough, I will even be including some of my own personal stories in here. So in some way, this is one of the more personal episodes that I've done, even though it's not really that deep, to say the least. But before I get into all of that, I want us to discuss something that happened very, very recently in our sister country or country next door known as Uganda. Now, the president of Uganda, known as Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, recently signed in an anti-gay bill into law following improvements adopted to make it tougher for people engaging in homosexuality to stay in Uganda. Now, considering that this was sort of signed into law on Monday, if I'm not wrong, I'm actually surprised how so many people were all up in arms about it until the US. Like, I can get that some people weren't entirely for the thing and all, but, like, it's not like it was that legal to do that in the first place. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me and all, but was it ever really legal there? And I know people are all up in arms because like the penalties are much higher. You have a chance to face, I think, 20 years to like life if you're caught engaging in it. And like there's full breakdowns of that entire thing, which I don't entirely have right now. But the reality of it is it's not like it was that legal over there. I think they just used to have more or less the same stance as Kenya, but with a bit more of a conservative approach to it. Because if you're in Nairobi and you at some point tell a guy in a particularly well-to-do part of town that you're gay, for the most part, as long as you don't look all loud and proud about it, there's nothing wrong that people will have. Most people will kind of look at you and be like, all right, fine, cool. Like, there's not that many people that'll be up in arms busy saying, oh, I can't be found chilling next to you and shit like that. Because we sort of kind of accepted it to a certain degree, which is why I very commonly talk about the fact that they exist on a gray line. But in Uganda, you try saying that, like, if people know that you're gay, you're fucked. So as long as people don't know that you're gay or that, you're doing it with the same sex, for the most part, you're particularly okay. Then, on top of that, this is Yoweri Museveni. What exactly did you people expect? This is the same person who not too long ago was busy speaking out against giving head during a press conference. Like, would it be too hard to think that this guy would be against gay shit as well? And if you think I'm lying, I actually have the clip where he says this, so let me just play it for you right here.
Let me take this opportunity to warn our people publicly about the wrong practices indulged in and promoted by some of the outsiders. One of them is what they call oral sex. The mouth is for eating. The mouth is for eating. Okuria, cham. The mouth is for eating, not for sex. We know the address of sex. We know where sex is.
And after such a situation has occurred, you're actually thinking that this guy is going to look at an anti-gay bill and be like, no, I am not going to sign this into law because this is Uganda and we do not believe in harming people's lives and we believe that even criminals and homosexuals should all be treated with respect. This is Uganda. Like, you guys actually thought that if this guy isn't going to allow even straight people to have sex nicely, you thought that he was going to allow gay people to do their shit as well? Come on, bruh. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't have anything against the LGBT, and honestly, I'm going to reserve my views on whether I'm for or against this entire bill. But all in all, I think anyone who believes that them trying to withhold some shit just so that the president of Uganda can walk back this entire thing is probably a little bit daft. And with that said, I do feel like I have overstayed the welcome without giving you guys a welcome. So, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who believes that the mouth is for eating and sucking. It's just that some do it a little bit more than others. He's a man whose favorite form of cardio includes running his mouth. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Tweet Street, the show where we take a deep dive into Twitter, pull up a couple of tweets and break them down a little bit. Now, as usual, if you know the drill, you can repeat it after me. If you don't know the drill, it's okay, I'ma say it for you. And if you do know the drill but you don't want to use it, then by all means, what are you waiting for? Because your feedback could make it onto an episode of the podcast, if not make an entire episode of the podcast, simply because you felt that it should be something that should be discussed, and I don't see why you shouldn't utilize it. And it's a very simple drill, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly on Facebook and on IG. If it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @Breaktime on Westside on Facebook or on IG, and I will take it from there and I will handle it accordingly. Now, we do have an episode full of a couple of interesting tweets that I need to get into, but before we do that, there was a particularly interesting story that I saw, which I felt that we should probably discuss before we get into the tweets. Now, for those of y'all that are big fans of golf, hell, even though you're not a massive fan of golf, you probably know of the athlete known as Tiger Woods. Now, Tiger Woods' ex-girlfriend is now accusing him of sexual harassment in some new documents coming after a $30 million lawsuit that was given to him because he tricked her into thinking he was taking her on a vacation, but instead dropped her off at the airport and locked her out of the house. I don't know, this just sounds like Tiger Woods is on some future shit right now. But you know what, let me just read the article for you real quick. So the article reads, and I quote, Tiger Woods' ex-girlfriend Erica Herman has accused the golf star of tricking her into his Florida mansion under the guise of going on a quote-unquote short vacation, only to lock her out amid their messy and shocking split, newly unveiled court documents allege. News of the couple's split only emerged Wednesday when details surrounding their months-long legal battle, which has so far been kept under wraps, surfaced publicly as Herman, 38 years old, sought to toss out a non-disclosure agreement that she signed in 2017. The legal fight kicked off in October when Herman filed a landlord complaint in October last year alleging Woods, 47, booted her from his sprawling Jupiter home using quote-unquote trickery and then repeatedly refused to let her back in, according to the filings obtained by the Post. The court papers state that those working on behalf of Woods Trust convinced Herman to pack a suitcase for a short vacation, and when she arrived at the airport they told her that she had been locked out of her residence in violation of the oral tenancy agreement and in violation of Florida law. Herman alleges that Woods paid for a quote-unquote hotel room and certain expenses for a short period of time and frightened her away from returning to the property. Those working for Woods subsequently removed her personal belongings and took $40,000 in cash that belonged to her before making scurrilous and defamatory allegations about how she obtained the money. In the landlord filing, Herman claimed the couple had an oral agreement that ensured she could live at the mansion for a total of 11 years, and she still had 5 years remaining on the golf star called it quits on their relationship. Based on the time left on her 5-year tenancy, Herman argued in court papers that she was entitled to compensation of roughly $30 million. End quote. Okay, now let's be particularly honest about a few things. First of all, it sounds like this bitch is crazy. And no, I'm not saying this as an insult, I'm saying it because that's exactly what it sounds like. An oral agreement to stay for 11 years just so that you can date him for 6 and be left with 5? Come on, bruh. Like, if that don't sound like a bunch of bullshit, I don't know what the fuck does. Like, don't get me wrong. I think dude seemed like he was doing her a favor by letting her stay in the house, but this is Tiger Woods. I tend to think that probably this guy wanted to get rid of the house and Shorty didn't want to get out. Or probably he wanted to move her into an apartment and she was like, nope, she wants to stay in the house and she doesn't want to leave. Which kind of makes sense to me because if dude has pretty much been taking care of you, he's been letting you live in his house rent free, not paying a single fucking dime, and then he decides that you're about to bounce, the best thing that I can do is either thank him or just calmly plead with the guy to give you a little bit more time. But no, you've decided that you want to sue the man? Like, don't get me wrong, like this guy has made a fuck ton of money and I get he's also lost quite a bit because of women, but of all crazy bitches, I feel like this is one of the ones that should be on his top tier list, because this guy has a very nice tier of women in terms of the crazies. Because I can remember, I think it was his ex-wife that took like a golf club and bashed his car window or some shit, wrecked a couple of things. This one is suing him for $30 million because she got kicked out of the house. Like, how the hell does this guy collect his babes? Like, that's the next thing that we should probably be asking, because I know fine babes can be crazy, but those fine babes that are crazy also tend to have particularly good pussy. But how the fuck do you not get done with that kind of good pussy for 6 years? Like, I feel like in 6 months I'd have been tired of the babe and I'd have dropped her. 6 years. This dude kept her for 6 years before he actually got rid of her. Like, how the fuck does this guy do it? I don't know. Is it a money thing? Is it that he's just attracted to the crazies? I don't know. Either way, I feel like this man probably has an issue just as much as the babe, because I do not get how you can deal with one crazy bitch after another and all of them are just screwing you over time after time after time. But anyways, probably if I get his kind of money, I might end up falling into the same problems, God forbid. But either way, I am going to leave that one at that because we do have a bunch of tweets to get into, so I will move it on. So on to our very first tweet of this episode. In high school, I went to a sleepover and the girl I liked climbed into bed with me and she started tickling me. I was like, ha ha ha, okay, well, time for bed. And I think about that twice every 5 minutes. Okay, so I think this is about the time when the fellas get to think about their regrets, because I feel like we actually need to discuss them for a bit of a while. Like, I know I'm the guy that will come out and say guys don't get it as much. You know, there's a lot of guys that don't have sex. There's a lot of guys that don't get access to babes that can give them sex like that. And a lot of them will stay a very long time without getting some from a babe. And, you know, that's something that I will continue doing. But there are some of us that get a chance with a babe or get chances with babes and we throw them away just because of some bullshit or some perceived kind of bullshit that we probably would have overlooked and managed to get the goods. And I'll even admit I'm one of those guys. Like, I've actually made that mistake a couple of times before and I'm not proud of it. I used to regret most of them, but at least I got to a point where I stopped really giving too much of a shit. And it's not because I'm getting like ridiculously good pussy, it's just you can't regret shit like that forever, because at the end of the day it's pussy. But I've actually rejected a couple of advances from babes, usually based off of some dumb shit. Like, there was a time when a babe that I was in uni with, like one of the more popular ones, known because she's fine, she's got a booty and everything, I had a chance with the shorty, and I can remember it was right after a school event, and I chose to pay twice the amount of money for the Uber just so that I can get to my place, or at least my parents' place, sleep on my bed, because I didn't want to wake up the following morning in a different place feeling groggy. Like, I'd have actually had a chance to go and lay pipe on that babe that evening. And most guys never used to get a chance like that. I did, and I threw it away. And considering that I didn't get that chance again, because shorty never let me come through, like, I'm not gonna say that it didn't hurt, but yeah, I definitely wish I was there again so that I'd make a different decision. And interestingly enough, that's not the only one. I've had others. I've had situations where a babe was very aggressive and just wanted to bang, and I sort of, you know, internally freaked out for a bit, and I ended up saying no in some way or another. But I tend to think that the ones that hurt the most are actually the ones where you had a chance to date a babe and you passed up on that opportunity, and it's a particularly great babe. Like, those ones are the ones that I feel like tend to hurt the most, because the pussy one you can sort of feel bad about it, but probably for just a couple of minutes, or when you're talking about it with the boys. But those ones that you had an opportunity to be in a relationship with a babe, and worse still, when you're really thinking about going back and like trying to relive those moments and get a chance again, you find that the shorty's engaged or she's married. Oh, that's the shit that usually hurts. That's the one that burns, because on one end, at least for some of us guys, you don't want to go and try and disrupt a marriage, but on the other end, you know that she's such a good babe And you know that if you gave the both of you a chance, then you guys would probably be a lot farther off. Hell, probably you'd even be the guy that would have proposed or would have even been married to her right now. But no, your ass decided not to do that shit and probably chose to stay in the streets like that. And that's one of those things that you just have to accept, is a burn that will continue to burn you slowly and deeply for a very long time. Not unless you find something better or you finally come to terms with that shit and you move on. But all in all, a lot of those regrets are usually particularly interesting when you talk about them, and they're usually fun to discuss, but it's not something that sits very well with you for a particularly long time as a guy. Either way, I will let that one go and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode. You meet a 35 plus man who's single, top eligible bachelor, and they quickly show you why they are single. Okay, so most of the guys that I know that are, I'd say, mid 30s or at least mid to late 30s and aren't married, I won't even bring up the kids or no kids part. There's usually something that will sort of have put them in that particular position that you can sort of trace back to probably when they were in their 20s. So, for example, a lot of those guys who are probably 35, single, no relationship, no engagement, no married or anything, you might actually find that probably during their 20s they went through some shit or they were handling some shit that just ended up eating up that time. And as such, they didn't end up with the good period where they can go and like quote unquote normal date someone and possibly have something with that person. And they just ended up, where they are right now. And interestingly enough, sometimes you can find that it was a case of drug abuse. You can find that it was a case of hardship. You can find that it was a case of psychological or financial issues that they had to deal with. And they couldn't really get into a relationship or even contemplate getting into a relationship because they had a lot bigger shit to worry about in their own lives, as opposed to them trying to do the more normal thing of trying to get a girlfriend within that time period. And it's entirely understandable. And I think those guys actually do tend to be particularly good people because they learn to take accountability and they can learn to, pick up and move on from where they left off. But on the flip side, even though I am sort of advocating for these guys, there's also another set of these guys who, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, just refuse to grow up. Like, I'm totally saying this out of lack of experience, so you can tell me that I'm spewing a bunch of bullshit, but there's a lot of those guys that will pretty much try and relive them being 23, 24, 25 all the way till they're 35. The typical go to work, get done with work, you go for a couple of drinks, you go and party, and you just repeat year after year after year. You cycle through babes, you talk about character development, you're not trying to look that much further ahead, and it's literally just you living life on the fast lane for as long as you can. And some of those guys, you will find that some of them probably have a baby mama or two, and that can be their issue. But for some of them, you find that probably they just haven't grown up or they just haven't gotten their priorities straight, so they might not actually make for the best partners. All in all, I personally do think that the age shouldn't be too big of an issue, at least for most of those guys, because what you'd probably consider to be one of the best ages for guys to get married is usually between 30 and 35. So if they're above 35, maybe they're just a little bit late to the party. Either way, that's just my thoughts on it, and I am going to leave it at that because I do have one more tweet to get to. So on to our very final tweet of this episode. Men, let's have a short conversation. What would make you ghost a lady that you were so interested in? Okay, now I'm going to leave the more obvious answer out of this, at least until the end, because I feel like guys ghost babes for so many reasons, and sometimes guys don't even know that they've ghosted a babe. And I'm just gonna say that one out of my personal experience, because I don't really have a moment where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna stop talking to this babe out of the blues. Like, most times if I ghost a babe, if someone can really call it ghosting, it's just us guys no longer communicating. Like, we just stop talking over time. Like, the communication breaks down, it becomes less and less and less and more inconsistent up until you just get to a point where you guys stop talking. Now, I do know people that will actively ghost and like just go silent on you. But for the most part, I tend to think that for a lot of people, if you can really call it ghosting, it's just them no longer having the same interests and just leaving and moving on. Because when you kind of think about the reasons why a guy can ghost a babe, and this one I can even try and make it a little bit more from my personal experience. Like, there's times when you find that a guy just stops talking to a babe simply because dude found out that this babe's been having a man all along and you're pretty much being strung into the friend zone and you just don't want to get there. So you look at it, you're like, it's either I'm dating this babe or I'm not. I have enough female friends, I don't really need to worry about it. So you know what, I'm done with this babe, and you stop talking. To which I'll say, in my opinion, that's actually a particularly good reason to. Like, I don't see why the hell you need to continue entertaining the idea of possibly being with this babe, and yet this babe is going to do nothing but exploit you because of it. Then the other reason that I think I've probably not continued speaking to a babe over is the smell. Like, do you know those people that just have the smell of sweat on them like 99% of the time? Like, I don't know if it's probably a condition, I don't know if it's the fact that they don't use deo or like lotion or some shit or just scented products. They just smell like sweat, just generally. And it's just one of those things that can sort of put you off, because as someone once said, you always need to ensure that you smell good, because the very first hole that you're going to penetrate on a human being's body is their nostrils. And like, that shit's stuck with me for quite a bit of time. Then third reason that would make me not continue talking to a babe, I realized that she has a dude. Like, it's a babe that I'm interested in, I didn't know it, then I automatically realized that she has a dude and I was already getting too close, I can just back off. Like, I've had those moments, and normally it's not even the same as the whole possibly being friend zone. It's just, you pretty much know that the babe still loves her man, and you know that there's nothing happening, and that's pretty much someone else's territory. So you just leave it alone. Personally, I'm not the type to try and steal a babe from another dude. That's just not me. Not unless if the babe wants to start giving me pipe on her own accord. And for the most part, I would much rather go and deal with the many single babes that do not have a man with them, as opposed to me trying to yank you off of some other dude in a fight that will probably drain me of resources and other things that I don't really feel like I should be giving up. But that said, the other reason why I would choose to not continue talking to a babe that I'm interested in. Yes, this one is particularly interesting because I know that there's a couple of guys who will probably resonate with it. When you have pretty much bust a nut and then you look at a picture of the babe and you're like, she's pretty much just looks, and the main reason why I was really into this babe was because I was horny. Like, you pretty much started hollering at the babe, you thought you were really into it, then at some point either you jack off or you bang another babe, but you look at the shorty again and you're like, you know what, there's nothing too much about this that I really want. Like, she's good looking, but it's not like there's that much that we really gel with. But all in all, we all know the main reason why people ghost each other is mostly because they lose interest and they just don't want to turn someone down openly, and as such, or probably they just don't want the whole talk about it and everything, and as such they'd much rather drop the person. Reasons why, it's a factor of things. It can be anything from behaviors to the social perception changing to something that they've done or something that you wish they did. And that is a super long list of reasons which I don't think can ever really find an end. So for now, I'm just gonna let it end there, but I can probably ask you what it is that would make you ghost a person or ghost someone that you're particularly interested in, because I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On Twitter, it is @BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is @BreakTime on Westside. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.